people are watching from your location. Again, welcome and thank you so much for your patience as we work through some technical challenges. So glad to have you all here today. I'm Jamie Ivory, the logistics coordinator from your location. I'm Jamie Ivory, the logistics coordinator for the Polar STEAM program, and we are excited to have you with us today. Polar STEAM is a US NSF funded program based at Oregon State University that facilitates virtual and field based collaborations between polar researchers, educators, and artists to enhance science communication, bringing polar science to everyone. A recording of this live stream will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we will keep the focus of today's events on this team's sonic and scientific stories from Antarctica. But I do want to take a moment to mention that our 2026 virtual and Arctic field educator and research fellows are posted on our website. The 2026-27 Antarctic Artists and Writers Fellowship process is progressing for the upcoming season, and we look forward to sharing updates once placements are confirmed. We are currently recruiting NSF-funded polar researchers for 2027 collaborations, and if you have any questions about our artist, educator, or researcher programs, please refer to the information on our website. The FAQ section will answer most of your questions, and we will update the Apply Now page when we have new information. So now today, we are excited to connect with two of our Polar STEAM fellows, Tricia Thibodeau and Kyra Sims, sailing off the coast of at this point they are in the Drake, and they've spent much of their time in the Weddell Sea near Seymour Island, which you can see over here, and we invite you all to submit questions in the live chat. Our team will monitor and ask these questions, and the questions submitted ahead of time through the Google form after we experience some of Kyra's original work. So we're going to start the presentation from the fellows in the field, and then Kyra will share some of her original work that was created in Antarctica, and then we will follow those with questions and with a question and answer session. So now I would really like to introduce our fellows. Tricia Thibodeau is a plankton ecologist and biological oceanographer who studies how rapid environmental change is affecting the drifting plants, phytoplankton, and animals, called zooplankton, that support marine ecosystems. Her research focuses on two major questions. How are long-term trends in plankton populations shifting as the environment changes? And two, how are the basic functions of plankton, such as growth, feeding, and overall physiology, being altered by these changes? As an assistant professor at University of New England, she investigates these topics in marine environments around the world, from the icy waters of Antarctica to the dynamic coastlines of the Gulf of Maine. And Kyra Sims is a musician, writer, and performance artist residing in New York City. She creates soundscapes, song cycles, and experimental work, drawing from elements of her life and from the world at large, while also examining and dancing with the alchemy between performance and audience. In addition, she has worked as a backing musician with Lizzo, John Baptiste, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and many other artists. She has performed as an ensemble member and a soloist all over the world, and her Broadway credits include the Tony Award-winning musical Illinois and drama desk-nominated off-Broadway shows Carmen Jones and Soft Power. Tricia, Kyra, welcome. Now I'll turn it over to you to tell us about your experience from the Weddell Sea.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much for having us. We're so excited. We are in the Drake. You can't see our hands, but they may at times be holding on to the table that the laptop is on. But yeah, we just had a wonderful several weeks in the WDLC region, doing so much sampling of the sea ice and the water and getting so much data. It's been so wonderful learning about what all of the scientists here have been researching and studying and helping them in a lot of cases. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's been great to have Kyra joining us as well. It's been really interesting, like when we were getting our lab set up and we're pulling out all of our filters and microscopes and stuff, and Kyra's pulling out her French horn and getting that all set up, and the dichotomy was really fun. And it's been cool she's been taking a lot of recordings of different sounds, and it's always interesting to hear and see like what different parts of our science she wants to record that I would never even think would produce a sound. So
yeah.
So I'm going to go first and give a little more introduction to the science that we've been doing down here. So our team is a group of 7 women from around the world. We're deeming ourselves Project Limbo, which stands for Linking Ice Melt to Biogeochemistry and Organisms in the Weddell Sea. We've got 2 sea ice experts from the University of Illinois, Ellen Buckley and her graduate student, Rose Malanga. And then myself and my master's student, Haley Thomas, focused on the zooplankton in the Weddell Sea. And then Maggie Brisbane, who's at the University of South Florida. Kyra, of course, who's been a wonderful hand, and most of the crew on the ship thought she was a scientist until like 2 weeks ago. Just thought she was bringing her horn for fun. So that was interesting to explain to people. And then we have another colleague, Meredith Meyer, who's not sailing with us, but she's a marine biogeochemist. So she's been helping us to design some of our experiments we've been doing and whatnot, and will help us analyze some of our data. And this was a project that was funded by the National Science Foundation. And like I mentioned, I am a zooplankton ecologist, so I'm interested in understanding how the animal drifters, which includes things like krill, which is the kind of shrimp-looking thing you see in that image on the right there, at how their population dynamics are changing in a rapidly warming Western Antarctic Peninsula region. And what's cool about this project is, since we're on the Weddell Sea side, this area has actually been seeing higher than average sea ice concentrations, especially for this year. So it creates a really interesting dichotomy to compare how the higher sea ice concentrations on the Weddell Sea side are structuring the zooplankton communities, in contrast to the Western Antarctic Peninsula that's been seeing declines in sea ice. And so we use this really large 2-meter by 2-meter frame net to collect the zooplankton off the back deck of the ship. And we get Antarctic krill, as I mentioned, but also a lot of really cool other kinds of zooplankton like salps. You can't really see them, but they have these little red guts that are in the image there on the right. And they're actually translucent, so you can't really see the rest of them. But both the Antarctic krill and the salps are about the size of your pinky finger, so they're pretty big. You can advance to the next slide. And when we collect our zooplankton, we then process them live on the ship. So this is Kyra helping us out, as always, with our zooplankton processing. We have to dump out all the contents onto a tray. Then we count everything and identify it. And some of my personal favorite zooplankton that we catch are pteropods. They're open ocean snails. These ones on the right here are called sea angels, and they actually are carnivorous and eat other pteropods, but they're really fun. They have little wings that allow them to move around through the water column. And I think they were one of your personal favorites too, Kyra.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, they're charismatic microfauna, as I like to call them. If you want to. Yeah, great. And so this is just an image of the Sikuliaq that we were on. It's about a 270-foot long vessel. And at a series of different stations, we would deploy this conductivity temperature depth instrument that you see here on the right, or CTD. And it has a bunch of these large gray bottles that we use to collect water at different depths within the water column. And then we can filter that water down to look at the phytoplankton abundance, which is what the zooplankton eat, as well as filtering water for the DNA so we can sequence the community composition that's in the water. And we also take water samples for nutrients and temperature and salinity so we can get a strong kind of breadth of water quality characteristics for that region. And then I can compare that data to the zooplankton abundance that we're collecting with the net. And these are just some other photos of myself and Kyra and my master's student, Haley, who's right here to join us today to say hello. And this is a photo of Haley and I. We do a lot of water filtering in addition to counting zooplankton. That's a key part of marine science oceanographic research. And then this is a photo of Kyra and I. Another key part of our research is doing sea ice characteristics. So Ellen Buckley and her grad student, Rose Malanga, are working to actually take measurements of the temperature and salinity of the sea ice, and then comparing that to satellite characteristics that they measure. And so we actually had an opportunity to put the gangway on a sea ice flow and go out and help with the measurements there. So that was a really cool opportunity that I've never gotten to do. And I've been coming down to Antarctica for a decade now. So that was definitely a memorable experience. And Kyra played her horn on the sea ice flow, which was also very cool. And our trip started out a little bit differently than we anticipated. As I mentioned, the Weddell Seas had a really high sea ice year. And so we started heading into the Weddell Sea towards Seymour Island, where our goal was to drop off some geologists to go camping there for a few weeks. But it took us way longer to get to the island than we expected because there was a ton of sea ice. So this is just an image of the Sikuliaq trying to break through some of that sea ice, and another image of some cute penguins that are traversing through the sea ice. But I just like this image because you can just see how much sea ice there is. We kind of half joked you could have taken a snowmobile to get across the ice faster than we were moving with the ship. So thankfully, the ice did eventually move further east because the winds shifted. And so then we were able to make it to Seymour Island, which was great. And we were able to do a lot of the science that we had proposed to do as well. So overall, it worked out, but it just was an interesting start to the trip. And these are just some other of my favorite images we took. The one on the bottom left is of Seymour Island, which actually doesn't have any snow on it. And that's one of the reasons that the geologists were really interested in studying it, because their whole project was focused on looking at fossils from the Cretaceous period and trying to better understand and explain the dinosaur extinction. And apparently this island has like some of the best fossils in the world for doing that. So that was cool to experience. And of course, there were some Adelie penguin colonies on this island. So we were very excited about seeing those. But I never seen, like, you think of Antarctica as being very white, and it is, but some of these islands that we were on, like Seymour, were totally covered in just sediment and mud. So that was an interesting dichotomy. And then we did, of course, see some really beautiful sunsets as well as some wildlife. This is an image of a humpback whale. And when we were traversing through our different stations, since we were trying to characterize the sea ice gradient, and a lot of our transits were through sea ice. So we did have a lot of beautiful transits and penguins and whales that we saw along our trip, which makes for a very fun experience. And I think that's everything from me. So Kyra, I'll let you take it away from there.
Yeah. So coming onto the ship as a Polar STEAM Fellow was such an amazing experience. I really tried as an artist to come in with no real goal in mind, because I knew that everything I was going to be experiencing was going to be so new to me, and I didn't want to put the art I was going to make, I didn't want to put it in a box prematurely. So it was so great to meet the team in Punta Arenas. This is a picture of us in front of the Sikuliaq the day we were departing. Tricia got us all krill themed t-shirts, which actually someone on Palmer Station had one too.
Yes.
Who makes these again?
Kim Bernard. She is actually at Oregon State University as well.
Okay.
But she's a krill biologist.
Yeah.
Who coordinated making these. Yeah.
So this is us posing with all of our krill t-shirts. The team has been so welcoming and so open about sharing their knowledge with me, and it's been so fun to help them. This picture on the left is from was this our first ice station? This was our very first ice station, which was one where the ship was able to put down a gangway. So it was one that a lot of people on the ship on the ship that didn't have other work were able to come onto the ice and take pictures and see what the scientists on the ice station were doing and helping out with digging and various things. And so I brought my horn out and played in some penguins far away. Saw, we saw them. We don't know if they really heard us, but it was cool to.
We liked Kyra's music.
Yeah. They did. They did end up coming closer. I don't know if there was a correlation between my playing and them coming closer, but I like to think that they liked it. And these are some pictures that I've taken. One thing I've really been struck by here is the beauty of everything. So this picture on the left is a still from a GoPro shot underwater. I accompanied the ice station team on Zodiac operations a few times where I could really get close to the sea ice with a GoPro. And so this is just directly under the water, so you can see the surface on the top there. So one of the videos we'll see soon it's all underwater, and I filmed it upside down. And so it something that I really loved about those discoveries was seeing how there was even like splashes of bubbles and things underwater, and how like things behaved under the water was so similar to how they behave above the water, which was just interesting to me, not a scientist, that I didn't know that things behave that way. And then on the right is Marambio, is that how you say it? Marambio Station. On Seymour Island as we were coming back from a transect. This was early in the morning, and the water was still, and the full moon. It was the first time we'd seen the moon the whole trip, and it was still bright in the sky and during sunrise, and so it just made for a very dramatic Wes Anderson style photo that I was excited I was able to capture. This is the one on the left is another one from that same morning. That is the shadow of the Sikuliaq on a very big iceberg. And then on the right was another trip we were able to take while we were in the Seymour Island region. This is on Snow Hill Island, where a Swedish scientist, I cannot remember how to pronounce his last name, but
No, but you know his first
what was
name.
it?
Nordenskjold.
Otto Nordenskjold had built this hut with a team, and their plan was to do some overwinter studies for one winter. Ended up being there for multiple winters because their ship wasn't able to come back. This was early 1900s, and the ship they were on, I think it was called the Antarctic, ultimately got trapped by sea ice and sank. Miraculously, I think everyone involved survived. There was a lot of mushing across miles of sea ice to get from one island to the other. They ended up taking in some survivors from a completely separate thing into this hut, but it was a very small hut, very small rooms with bunks, but apparently it kept them warm over an Antarctic winter, which is fascinating to me. And another fun tidbit is that my French horn's name is Otto. So it was great to play Otto in Otto's hut. And I have some recording of that we'll hear.
Oh, thank you. That was really awesome. So now, Kyra, I think we're going to go and share some of your original work.
Yes. So the first piece I'd love us to look at is first year sea ice. So the project that I proposed with Polar Steam was to create a piece, the working title Otto in Antarctica, that took from field recordings and stories that I accumulated on this trip and to turn it into a sound experience. But I've experienced so much here that I think I actually now have 3 projects that I'm gonna go home and finish. And this is the first one that I really got started on. So first year sea ice is dedicated to the Sikuliaq. because this is the first time that the Sikuliaq has been in Antarctica. So it's a very historic voyage. And I wanted to write a horn call to commemorate that historic voyage, and also back to some of the original ideas that I had in my proposal, which talked about the story of a botanist that was supposed to go on an expedition with James Cook to the Southern Ocean region to see if there was anything down here in the 16, 1700s. And he wanted to bring a whole entourage of people and equipment, including 2 French horn players, but his demands were too great and the Admiralty canceled it. So he went to Iceland instead. But that story really activated me as an artist, thinking like, oh, what would it have been like to have French horn players like calling across the ice? And so this piece also harkens back to that idea. So that's, I think, the first video I'd love to play. And yeah.
And Sikuliaq means first year sea ice,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yes. And Sikuliaq also means first year sea ice.
In Inuit up in Alaska, which is where the ship is based. Yeah. So I love that connection too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I will play that in just a moment. And just a reminder to viewers, if you have questions as you're watching this work that Kyra created, or anything about the science or their experiences in Antarctica, please go ahead and add those to the chat and we'll ask them later. And now, very excited to share some original work.
So it'll be more of a full-length piece that I'll finish back stateside.
Awesome. Thank you. That was super cool. Do you have other things you want to share with us?
Yeah. We go to a field recording next. So doing the field recordings here has been so much fun. I did so much research before this trip because I knew I wanted to capture really good sound. And there is a very lively, vibrant field recording community on the internet, believe it or not. And so I got some really great advice from different forums. And so I came down with a Rode shotgun mic and a Movo blimp, which is a very large sort of blimp shaped windshield that goes over the shotgun mic, and then a large kind of fur coat called it, in layman's terms they call it a dead wombat, because it's just a very large fur coat that goes over the whole thing, and it cut out so much wind when you I think with everyone film something on their phone and it's windy, you hear that. It does none of that. Like, if you can hear the wind, it is just part of the soundscape, not an interrupter. And so one of my favorite captures was when we first entered the sea ice, I think on January 16th, and the Sikuliaq is breaking a particularly large piece of ice. And so I'd love to play that next.
Great.
It's very windy in Antarctica, so it's good to have that.
Yeah.
This is Sikuliaq Icebreak?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just a moment.
And I think you can see it a little bit in the corner when the ice is really breaking. You can kind of see a corner of the microphone, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm like having to like really hold it steady because the wind was blowing so much, and you can't even really hear in that recording.
Mm.
No,
And
that
I
was
also have to point out all the orangey brown stuff that you see in the ice is ice algae, which is basically phytoplankton and good primary producers that provide a lot of food for the juvenile krill that depend on the ice to survive. So, yay!
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you,
there's a lot of
Tricia.
that in that video.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Trisha if that's what it was. So that's amazing, all the colors that you were able to capture. And then, yeah, I've been out to sea on research vessels. It's always windy, no matter where you are, Antarctica even more so. So that was a really impressive technique that you had for capturing that. What can we
Thanks.
listen and see next?
So why don't we go to Otto and Otto's hut? So this is the this is the hut that I was talking about before, and I just did like a very short little improv because we didn't have a lot of time because of the tides to spend on Snow Hill Island. So it was a very quick like boop a doop, then we got out of there.
I don't think Kyra's mentioned yet, but well, we can say that. Do you want to just that your goal is to play your horn on every continent
It's
in the
true.
world. So a lot of what Kyra's goals were, I feel like we're to like get out on the land and play some of her horn and
Yeah, so it was cool to get to play here.
Awesome. Okay.
And then Otto shot at the end.
also fun fact, my pug's name is Otto, so I love all the Otto references. Otto,
Love you.
Wow, Kyra, you were playing. I don't were the acoustics really that good in that hut?
No, no,
Oh
no,
my gosh, it sounded amazing.
no. No, it was dry. That was just me adding some stuff in post.
Oh, nice, nice, cool.
Yeah, which yeah, that's actually a good segue. Why don't we go to From the Bottom of the World next? Because I do a lot of things with electronics also in my work, and this was two bits of improvisation that I ended up stacking on top of each other while we were that I recorded at an ice station. And this was a unique ice station too because we went out on a Zodiac and a rescue boat followed us because the Sikuliaq actually dropped us off and went and did a transect while we were doing this ice station. So we were very alone in the middle of the ocean, but we had a rescue boat and the captain was on it, so we were safe. But we were very isolated, and I brought this specialty microphone that I brought with me that's made out of an old telephone receiver, which I thought it makes cool sounds, and I also thought it was just a nice visual. It's a nice like little red telephone receiver. So I recorded doing some improvised singing, and then I also brought one of my tiny post horns to the ice. So I played that a little bit, and when I took that footage, brought it back, put the two improvisations on top of each other, and then added electronics, some synth, and some electronic effects on the sound.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah, I feel like something I didn't fully appreciate is that Kyra's not just a professional French hornist. Like she does the full production of like, making the sound and, I don't even know the right words for all of these things. But anyway, there's a lot more that goes into producing a piece than just playing your horn. Maybe for a scientist like me, I didn't fully appreciate or realize that. So
That's all right.
thank you for showing me.
Oh, okay.
Chup, 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 chup. Hello, hello, from the bottom of the world. It's cold, but I'm wishing you were here. It's like nothing I've ever seen, and my heart is so full at the bottom of the world. This is an update. I'm doing very well. I'm so happy. And it feels so swell to be here, at the bottom of the world. The scientists are doing an ice station. They're pouring down on the ice floe that we're standing on. And they're doing a great job. At the bottom of the world, love there, love there, love there.
That was very cool.
So it was so fun to work on. And I have two more things. So one is I'd love to show a few minutes of some of the under the ice GoPro footage, because that will probably be a lot of what I use in the piece that I proposed for this fellowship. But before we show that, to talk a little bit more about the third piece, which I didn't include in the excerpts, is the icebergs down here have been so inspiring that a third project I want to do from this is write a song cycle where I tell stories about different icebergs that I've seen on the trip. And that one will be for horn, piano, and voice. So that'll be a longer project that I'll work on over the next 1 to 3 years. But the piece for the fellowship will involve a lot of this under the ice video footage that I'm going to be working with my colleague Bryn Hardiman, who is an incredible video artist, will also be manipulating this footage as well.
Oh, cool. And can you play piano too?
I know how, but a better person will ultimately play the part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So under the ice now?
Yeah, and we can just play maybe a few minutes of it because it's a long
Okay.
video.
All right. Just one moment. Okay.
Yeah, I think we can probably stop there. Yeah.
I love
Um,
all the rippling and like the colors and the different
yeah, so
ice
many colors.
textures.
Oh, yeah, so many colors, so many textures, so many sounds. Yeah, and again, I don't know if you saw there was some like underwater splashing. That is just so fascinating to me. I definitely want to go on a deep dive and figure like see if like people have studied that and the physics of that is so interesting. Yeah. So that will be yeah, a big part of my piece. If people want to see the whole thing, I can put it on my YouTube page of just that raw footage because it's fun to just sit and look at all of it. And then my last piece, so as an artist, a lot of my art making comes from relationships and day-to-day life, slice of life. And early on in the voyage, Tricia made this amazing who's who on the ship page with people's pictures. And did you take those pictures of
Mhm.
the And so for some people, she took their picture um to put it on this who's who. And uh so the one of the cooks, Evan, and the steward, Tim, took just very goofy photos, and it reminded me, because they were side by side on the who's who, they reminded me of sitcom characters. And so one thing led to another, and I wrote an entire theme song. I wrote an entire theme song. I recorded it, like mixed it, mastered it, added horn backing tracks, um, then filmed Tim and Evan in various locales in the galley and also on Seymour Island. And yeah, and then edited it and put it together. We played it at the Super Bowl during commercial breaks. Uh, and yeah, I wanted to include it just as to show that art can also be silly and fun, and it can be about your friends. And if it brings you joy, then go for it. And so I wanted to end things with galley pals.
Yeah, the crew's been really great to have on the ship too, and I think this is like a really nice tribute to them, and they all loved seeing it, of course, too. So it was awesome.
I love that. What a great way to wrap up that little section. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to push it again. Oh gosh, thank you so much for sharing all of those. It's wonderful to see some of the inspiration that you're finding down there and some of the work that's already coming out of it. At this point, I'd like to move into some questions that we got from the live chat, as well as from the form that people asked in advance. So let's see here. We'll start with Kyra. For Kyra, this is from Josh. How do the processes of science and experiments you have learned on this trip compare to the creative process you use when approaching your art?
Oh, I think just the main parallel I've seen is just the gathering of data. I spent a lot of time helping Tricia with plankton tones, of counting what came through the nets, what species, and logging it all down. And I feel like the way I've approached the field recording is that I was trying to get as much, like try to record as much as I could, just so I had so much to work with. That was one big parallel that I saw.
That's very cool. And then, yeah, Tricia, what has it been like seeing Kyra's music practices, and has her way of doing her art and her ways of thinking, did that inspire you or change anything about how you approach research and your experimentation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more parallels than you would realize. It's just that the tools that we're using are different. So like I said earlier, I love the dichotomy of like us pulling out our microscopes and like all of our equipment we were going to use to measure plankton. And meanwhile, Kyra's pulling out her horns and and her like cute little piano that she was using to like make sounds, and all these different types of equipment that she was using for her recordings. And I think too, I really appreciate that Kyra, really wanted to pay attention to sound, because I think as a scientist sometimes, and in a lot of different fields, you get so focused on just like getting the end product, and you don't take a moment to just appreciate being here. And I think Kyra's work helps remind us of that, of like, oh, you should just pay attention and listen to the sounds for 10 minutes and capture all the different things you can hear. And it was fun, like seeing all the different, like I said earlier, places and ways she wanted to record sounds that I would never have thought of before. And someone at some point brought up a good question of like, well, do you think the sounds of the ship impact plankton? And I'm like, geez, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that before. I'm sure it does in some ways, but that's not a question I've considered
Oh,
in my research.
that's a really interesting thing that you reminded me of. So I also brought a hydrophone with me that I put in various bodies of water, including at some ice stations. I put them through the drill holes. And at one of our last ice stations, it was another gangway one. So the Sikuliaq was right by us. And I put it through the drill hole. And I started hearing this clicking sound, and I thought it was the scientists working. I looked up, and they actually weren't like picking or anything. And I realized it was the echolocation of the Sikuliaq that I was picking up through the water.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's one of the tools the ship uses to measure depth on the ship, but you can also use it depending on the frequency of the sound you emit to measure like aggregations of plankton, for example, or fish. So sound's a very common way that we actually measure the ocean. So it's a good connection.
Yeah. And then, Tricia, we got a question in from Nancy. She was wondering, what do you wish people knew about the importance of plankton?
Well, I'll try to keep this. So plankton are really important in two ways. They both help to regulate our climate, but then they're also an important primary food source for all of the larger animals that we know, like penguins and seals and whales, especially down here in Antarctica. So phytoplankton, the plants of the sea, they fix carbon. So that means they take the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and convert it into organic carbon that then the zooplankton can eat. And that acts as a really important movement of carbon dioxide from our atmosphere into the ocean, where it can be stored for long periods of time. And so without plankton, it's estimated that carbon dioxide levels would be like 50% higher than they are today. And they also produce oxygen, of course, the phytoplankton. So every time you take a breath, you can thank the ocean for that and the plankton. But like I mentioned, one of the reasons that there are such big Antarctic marine animals down here, like humpback whales and orcas and penguins and lots of different kinds of seals, is because they primarily all eat Antarctic krill. And Antarctic krill are pretty big. As I mentioned, they're about the size of your pinky finger. So we don't need a microscope to see them down here, which is really cool. And without those krill, a lot of those animals down here wouldn't exist. So it's in order to understand how these larger animals are being impacted by changes in sea ice and whatnot, we need to understand what's happening at the base of the food web with the plankton. So I think they're very important. That's why they're fun to study.
Thank you. Yeah. And Kyra, this one's for you. How did you feel when you played your music in Antarctica? Was it different? And how from other places you've played, other cold places or even a concert hall?
Oh, yeah, this was like nowhere I've ever been. Sound wise, it was pretty, the acoustics were not too unusual. Pretty dry, which is fine. Horns definitely excel better in like a concert hall as far as like acoustics, but you can always add reverb in post, which is what I did. But that does remind me of when we went to Seymour Island. I did have one of the most unique experiences of my life, and that island is maybe the quietest space I've ever been to in my life. When we were up on the cliffs, there was wind and things, but if you went down and into the, like kind of the muddy valleys of the island, there was no sound. And I remember like that's probably one of the core memories I'm going to take away from this journey is this experiencing like such a complete lack of sound in an like outdoor environment.
Wow. Yeah. That would
I
be.
also feel like the dichotomy of you know, a ship usually is kind of loud. There's a lot of noises going on. It's constantly running its engines and whatever. And so then when you get off on land in Antarctica, it just feels even more quiet than you would be anywhere else. And one of the things I also didn't realize with Kyra having her horn is like horns are loud and ships are made of metal. And so the sound carried. And so when Kyra was first like trying to figure out where to practice, we had to figure out a good place for her that wouldn't wake up the crew because the crew's on like 24-hour schedules. So I was like, okay, where can she play her horn? That's not going to wake up the crew at 2 p.m. And so eventually we found out the winch room, which is where they control the lines to like deploy the nets and whatnot. Like that was the optimal place.
Yeah, it was a great space. And it was actually really soundproof. That's where I recorded the tracks for Galley Pals.
Nice. Tricia, I know you've done some work on the Western Antarctic Peninsula in the past. So how did, just visually comparing that to the composition of plankton that you've collected in the past, how is that maybe different? Is there anything that's jumping out to you that seems pretty different?
Yeah, I was really excited to come to this side because, like I said, I've been coming down here for 10 years. I've never been to the eastern side of the Antarctic Peninsula, which has historically way more sea ice. And so I thought we would see way more Antarctic krill than we did and have on the western side because this Antarctic krill need sea ice as part of their life histories. But surprisingly, we didn't really we saw krill at a few stations, but we also saw a lot of salps, which are these gelatinous zooplankton that tend to not depend on sea ice as much. And we also got a lot of pteropods, which I was excited about, and they tend to be less ice obligate. So they tend to be prevalent in ice-free areas as well. And, I still kind of have to like look at how the environmental conditions were at each station and how that may have influenced things. But it was interesting because we went to this one area of the Waddell Sea like 2 weeks ago, and then we came back to the similar area 2 weeks later, and there was just so much more biomass. We didn't count, thankfully, but we figured out that we had over 30,000 copepods in our tow.
The water in the bucket was pink because there were so many copepods in there.
Yeah. But also throughout the cruise, we got a lot of big jellyfish, which I wasn't expecting, like these big ctenophores, which are comb jellies. So they're the ones that don't sting. They don't have tentacles to sting you. But and we didn't usually get that on the western side of the peninsula. And I also think just like the abundance of copepods, which that's like the plankton and SpongeBob SquarePants, for those of you who don't know. We got a lot of those too. So and part of me thinks maybe because we were trying to always track this ice edge, if maybe sometimes depending on when we were there, maybe the plankton just didn't have enough time to build up their biomass because the area had just recently been covered by sea ice, so there hadn't been enough light to let the phytoplankton photosynthesize and all this stuff. But that's kind of my running hypothesis at the moment. But I mean, that'll definitely be something our team works on. We're hoping to all come back together in August in Maine for a little workshop to try to like crunch the numbers and look at all the data that we've been collecting and try to, figure out this story of what's going on in the Waddell Sea with the plankton and biogeochemistry.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very unexpected. And so we are a little short on time, so I just wanted to end for both of you. This seems like a question that you could both answer. Since, we may have classrooms watching today and they might be interested. Tricia, how did you get involved in research in Antarctica? And then Kyra, how did you find your way to Antarctica as an artist?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I grew up in Maine, and I think being near the ocean always made me appreciate being near the coast. And when I got to college, I took oceanography my freshman year, and it really helped link all the dots for me of just how important the ocean is in regulating our climate and supporting our coastlines and our ecosystems, and especially plankton because they're at the base of the food web. If you want to know what's going on with the rest of the ecosystem, you have to know what's going on with the plankton. So that's what got me interested in becoming an oceanographer and studying plankton. And I did my PhD at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. And Jamie and I were actually in the same lab in graduate school. So that's how we know each other, which is cool. And I had the opportunity to be on this project called the Palmer Antarctica Long-Term Ecological Research Program, which is supported by the National Science Foundation. And they've been collecting ecological data from the bacteria all the way up to the whales for over 30 years. It's a really incredible program. It's like the longest running time series of its kind in the Antarctica. And so I
And
got to go down every year.
sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
shameless plug. We're gonna have a live stream with that team on Thursday.
Yeah.
So, sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, awesome. Yeah, because they're doing their cruise on the western side of the Antarctic Peninsula right now. And so anyway, I had a wonderful opportunity doing that for my PhD, studying the zooplankton down there. And I've also always loved teaching. So I'm at the University of New England now, which is a primarily undergraduate institution. So I teach a lot, but I'm really thankful I've also still gotten to have this opportunity to come down to Antarctica and bring my master's student Haley with me. And I'm hoping in the next year or so I can teach a polar biology course and incorporate everything that we've done into that. But yeah, I just, always said yes to opportunities that came my way and was excited for all the traveling and amazing places I've gotten to go being an oceanographer because the ocean's everywhere. So I think that's one of the reasons I decided to pursue this path.
Yeah, and similar. I love saying yes to things, especially the adventures. I've always been one with wanderlust. I went overseas for the first time when I was 15 for a theater exchange program in Germany, and I think that's really where I caught the bug for traveling. I also was a big fan growing up of this book series called His Dark Materials, which follows, it's a fantasy series that follows a young girl named Lyra, so similar to my name. And in the first book, she ends up like going to the northern region, like Svalbard and things, and experiences like the northern lights and things like that. And I think that really like had a big impact on me as a kid. I've since read the trilogy, I think 3 or 4 times, and I'm due for another reread. And that and so that I think also gave me the bug for adventure. And yeah, I decided 2 or 3 years ago that I wanted to play on all 7 continents. It felt like a great bucket list item to do. And so I started looking for opportunities to get down here as an artist. And I think initially I found the Antarctic Artists and Writers program and emailed them, and they pointed me in the direction Polar Steam.
Yeah, which Polar Steam now runs that program. Yeah. Well, thank you, Kyra and Tricia, for sharing your stories on how you got to where you are, and Kyra for sharing some of your original pieces. We really appreciate it. I think the takeaway message for how you got where you are is like, say yes to opportunities, whatever they are, that pop up unexpectedly.
Absolutely.
Thank you again so much for your time, and please extend our thanks to the research vessel Sikuliaq. I know they've helped in so many ways, and they may have done some magic in the background with technical assistance to make this live stream possible. And we hope that your journey home goes well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. This was wonderful.
Yay. And for everyone else still watching, we really appreciate your time. I am going to bring up the slides one more time. If you can be patient with me here. There we go. Thank you again for your time, to all our viewers, for your insightful questions as well. There are many ways to stay engaged with Polar Steam. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow us on social media at Polar Steam Team. You can see our blog, educational resources, and program information on our website. I'd also like to invite you to join us for our next Cool Connections live stream happening this week. Yes, it's Antarctica week for us. This will be, yeah, Drifters Beneath Antarctic Waves will go live Thursday, February 12th from 11 to 11:45 Pacific time. A reminder that a recording of this live stream will be posted on our YouTube channel. And thank you so much for tuning in to Polar Steam's Cool Connections today. And we hope to see you at our next one on Thursday. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.